All right, so is Wuthering Heights actually worth reading?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
It is. It's a classic, but there are so many classics out there.
That's very true.
How do we know if this one's going to be for us? And that's what we're diving deep on today.
Exactly.
We've got two sources. One's like a professional book review from Goodreads, and then we've got a more casual, like a blog post about it.
Yeah, two very different perspectives on it, which I think will be interesting.
Yeah, and I think by the end of this deep dive, we'll be able to tell you whether or not Wuthering Heights deserves to be on your to-be-read list.
Or maybe your to-be-avoided list. Who knows?
Exactly. Or your hate-read list.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so first off, I guess we should talk about the writing style of Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, and I've heard some things.
I've heard some things too, and I'm a little bit nervous to even ask. But
Well, let's just get right into it then.
okay, so what is it like?
It's a very unique writing style.
Oh, yeah.
It's got this layered narrative thing going on.
Layered narrative.
Yeah, so it's like a story within a story within a story almost. So basically you've got this visitor, right, Mr. Lockwood, and he's hearing the story from the housekeeper, Nellie Dean. And this is all like 20 years after everything went down.
Oh, okay, so it's like we're getting like secondhand gossip, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so that already sounds kind of confusing to me.
Right, and that's exactly what some readers find frustrating. Like,
Yeah.
one of the reviews we've got here actually mentions that they were struggling to keep track of, like, who's telling what part of the story.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, on the other hand, the structure does kind of add to this air of mystery,
Okay.
Like, we're never quite sure if we're getting the full story, the unbiased truth, and that makes you question, everything about the characters, their motives.
Okay, so you're saying it's like unreliable narrators.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I mean, I could see how that could be interesting,
Yeah.
but also I do kind of like a straightforward plot,
Right, and there are readers out there who might just find this writing style way too much. Like, one of the sources describes it as, like, pedantic exposition. Like,
Yeah.
too much telling, not enough showing.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
But let's be honest. A book can have amazing writing and still be a total flop if the characters are just awful.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So what about the Wuthering Heights crew?
Oh, boy. Get ready for this.
Okay.
One of our reviews actually describes the characters as a, quote, a bunch of immature, insufferable, narcissistic assholes with very little self-respect.
Whoa. Okay, strong words.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, like, sometimes I kind of like those messy characters,
Oh, absolutely. Like the flawed ones.
Yeah, they feel more real.
They totally do. Like, there's a reason why we love a good anti-hero, right?
Exactly.
And speaking of anti-heroes, Heathcliff, he's like the definition of a Byronic anti-hero.
Yeah, like the brooding.
Brooding, passionate, capable of cruelty, but also like those weird moments of tenderness.
Yeah, he's the one everyone kind of pictures when they think of Wuthering Heights, right?
Totally like the tortured soul wandering the moors.
Yeah, okay, so can you give us some more specifics about Heathcliff? Like, what kind of stuff does he do that makes him so...
Oh, he's intense. Like, he's consumed by this need for revenge, right?
Right.
Driven to extremes by all these, like, social injustices he faced as an orphan. And we're talking digging up Catherine's grave, forcing his son to marry Catherine's daughter, like, as part of this messed up plan.
Okay, so that's dark.
It's dark, yeah.
But intriguing.
Yeah, very much so.
So, okay, we got to talk about Catherine because she's the other half of that equation.
Right, the infamous I am Heathcliff.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that line is like everything you need to know about their relationship.
Okay.
Like, it's intense, it's all about obsession, it's like destructive passion, it's not healthy love.
Okay.
But Catherine's also torn between that love for Heathcliff and, like, what society expects of her.
Right.
So she ends up making this choice to marry this more socially acceptable guy.
Oh, so she kind of betrays her heart.
In a way, yeah, but she never really finds happiness.
So it is a love story.
Some would say so.
But it's not a happy ever after.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's more like love gone wrong, love as a train wreck. You could say that, yeah, some people see it as a tragic romance.
Okay.
Others as a tale of obsession abuse,
Hmm.
like bordering on horror.
Wow.
Yeah, and some even argue that the real tragedy is the love story that never happened between them.
Oh, interesting, because they never really got to...
Right, realize it.
Yeah, to live out their love.
Right, and let's not forget about this setting, the Yorkshire moors.
Oh, yeah, they're always described as being so bleak and...
Bleak, wild, desolate.
Yeah.
And they totally add to this whole feeling of doom.
Yeah.
It's not just a backdrop. The moors, they represent this freedom, this wildness. It's like a place where Heathcliff and Catherine could escape society's rules.
Okay.
But they're also isolating, they're unforgiving, they're kind of mirroring the turmoil inside the characters.
Okay, so we've got complex characters.
We do.
We've got like this dark and stormy setting.
Yeah.
And a love story that's way more about obsession than happiness.
Way more.
Sounds pretty intense.
It is. It is. And it's not just Heathcliff and Catherine, right? Like we've talked about. But the novel actually spans generations.
Oh, wow.
So we see how their choices impact their children.
Okay.
And how those children kind of inherit that drama and repeat those same patterns of like pain and destructive behavior.
So it's like a generational saga then.
It is.
With all those Shakespearean themes of fate and consequence.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see why this is a classic, even if it's a little bit heavy.
Yeah, and it tackles these big issues, class differences, societal constraints, the destructive power of revenge.
Okay.
But, if that's not really your thing, like if you prefer a lighter...
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Don't give away the recommendation yet.
Okay.
Let's give our listeners a second to process all of this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because we covered a lot.
We did cover a lot. It is a lot. And, that's kind of why we do this deep dive thing.
Right.
Just to, like, help you figure out whether or not this is a classic you'd actually want to read,
Okay, so we're talking about the layered narrative thing and how we're getting the story from the housekeeper, Nellie Dean, like 20 years later.
Right, through Mr. Lockwood?
Right, but... like, how does that actually, like, play out in the book? Can you give me an example of, like, how that actually affects what I'm reading?
Yeah, so think about how we find out about Heathcliff's, like, backstory and stuff.
Okay.
Nellie, she was there. She saw it all.
Right. She was there from the beginning.
From the beginning. So she saw him come in as this, like, orphan kid and how terribly Hindley treated him.
Right.
And that whole bond that developed with Catherine.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's also, like, pretty upfront about the fact that she was never really that fond of him.
Oh, so we're seeing Heathcliff through the eyes of someone who maybe doesn't like him very much.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting, because you start to wonder, was Heathcliff really as wild and uncontrollable as she says, or was she maybe exaggerating a little bit?
Right, because she doesn't like him.
Because she doesn't like him, yeah. So it adds this whole other layer of, like, ambiguity.
Unreliable narrator.
Totally, yeah, unreliable narrator for sure.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to be reading this book and constantly questioning, like, is this true? Is this not?
That's the fun of it.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's like I'm putting the pieces together with Lockwood, trying to figure out who these people really are.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the love story, but what else is going on in Wuthering Heights?
Well, like we said, it's multi-generational, right? And Brontë does not shy away from exploring the dark side of human nature.
Okay, give me an example.
Like the cycle of abuse.
Okay, when you say cycle of abuse, what do you mean?
Well, think about it. We see how Heathcliff was treated as a child.
Right, horribly.
And then we see how that, like, affects how he treats other people.
Oh, so he becomes the abuser.
Yeah, he kind of perpetuates that cycle of violence and revenge.
So it's not just about romantic love then. It's about how trauma can warp a person and then how that affects everybody else around them.
Yeah, and it's like across generations too.
Oh, wow. Okay, and what about the setting? Does that play into all this?
Oh, for sure. The Moors are like a character themselves in this book.
Yeah, because everyone always talks about how bleak and desolate they are.
Right, exactly. They're not just a backdrop. They're like this reflection of what's happening inside the characters.
It's making me think of like those classic Gothic novels,
Totally. Yeah, with the crumbling castles and the storms and the, like,
Yeah, the brooding heroes.
Brooding heroes, exactly.
Okay, so this is all starting to make sense, but I do have to ask, like, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to books, so...
Yeah.
If it's just like all doom and gloom and like dark and twisty, I might need something a little lighter.
Yeah, true. Wuthering Heights is not a lighthearted read. Like, it's a tragedy for sure.
Right.
And there are some seriously dark moments, psychologically.
Yeah.
But if you like complex characters and stories that, like, really dig into the messiness of humanity, it can be a really rewarding experience.
Okay. And you mentioned that there are other books out there that I might like better, depending on my taste.
Yeah, so if you want a Gothic romance that's still got that, like, haunting atmosphere but maybe a more traditional love story, you could check out Jane Eyre.
Oh, by Charlotte Brontë.
Yes, exactly. Emily's sister.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that one. Isn't it about a governess or something?
Yeah, she's a governess, and there's this mysterious employer.
Okay.
But it's got those same themes of love and class and societal constraints.
Okay.
And it's got some dark stuff, but ultimately it's a little more hopeful.
Okay, that sounds promising.
Yeah.
Okay, what if I'm really digging the obsession angle, but I want something a little more modern?
Okay, well then you might love Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
Okay.
It's like a psychological thriller
Ooh.
about this young woman who's haunted by the memory of her husband's dead wife.
Okay, that sounds creepy and intriguing.
Yeah.
How is it similar to Wuthering Heights?
Well, it's got those same themes of jealousy and secrets and how the past can hang over you.
Okay.
And like Nellie Dean, the narrator, and Rebecca is not exactly reliable, so you never really know what to believe.
Oh, so it's got that unreliable narrator thing going on.
It does.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list for sure. So it seems like Wuthering Heights has opened up this whole world of possibilities.
Yeah.
But let's go back to Wuthering Heights itself for a second.
Okay, so should you read it?
So should I read Wuthering Heights?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. After all this discussion, like, what's the verdict?
Okay, so straight up, if you're looking for like a light and fluffy romance with a happy ending, Wuthering Heights is not it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not my thing. I'm more into stories that, like, make me think and challenge my perspective a little bit.
Good.
But I also don't really like anything that's too violent or depressing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be bummed out.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, Wuthering Heights does get pretty dark. There's no way around that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tragedy. We already talked about that.
Right.
But the violence isn't there just for shock value. It's all part of the story.
Mm.
It shows what happens when those passions run wild, you know,
Right.
and how destructive these cycles can be, like, across generations.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So if I'm into those morally gray characters in a love story, that's more about longing and obsession than rainbows and butterflies.
Then Wuthering Heights might be right up your alley.
Okay.
It's the kind of book that makes you think. And you can interpret it in so many ways.
Okay.
You might even find yourself feeling sorry for characters you hated at first.
Oh, interesting.
Or questioning your own ideas about love and what's right and wrong.
So you're saying it's more of an experience than just a book?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a journey into like the heart of human nature.
Wow.
It makes you think about the power of passion and the choices we make, and how those choices can affect us forever.
And that's Wuthering Heights.
That's Wuthering Heights in a nutshell.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Yeah.
Our deep dive into the wild world of Wuthering Heights.
We covered it all. The good, the bad, the ugly.
Exactly. And now it's up to you to decide if you want to take the plunge.
Oh, yeah. What do you think? Are you going to read it?
I think I might. I'm
Yeah.
definitely intrigued. And if you do decide to read it, we'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, definitely. Let us know what part stood out to you, what challenged you, what made you want to throw the book across the room.
Yes. Let us know.
Yeah.
And even if Wuthering Heights doesn't sound like your cup of tea, we gave you some great alternatives.
Right. We talked about Jane Eyre, if you want a more traditional Gothic romance.
Right.
And then there's Rebecca, if you're in the mood for something a little more modern and creepy.
Lots of options out there.
So many books, so little time.
That's the truth. So keep exploring, keep diving deep into those great books. And until next time, happy reading, everyone.